A big one, the elephant in the room is reimbursement. Like, who's going to pay for this? I think I can confidently say that somebody somewhere will pay for this. The healthcare system in general will see the utility and the benefit of AI. We're just at the beginning of seeing the advantages. Of course, there are downsides, but the benefits of AI in medicine, in GI, in endoscopy are literally huge.
Dr. Michael Byrne, founder and CEO of Satisfai Health. I'm so excited to invite you back again to the Scope Forward show. This is going to be a fun and exciting conversation, so a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you. I hope you're correct. It's great to be invited back somewhere twice, like going to a chat show. If you invite me back a third time, you're desperate for speakers or we're doing something really amazing.
I hope it's the latter, Mike. But thank you for joining despite your COVID infection. I know you have COVID, but I really appreciate that you've been able to make it.
I'm glad well, obviously it's virtual, so it's okay. But yeah, if I'm coughing and spluttering or croaky voice, your listeners will have to take my apology. 2 hours ago, I was still being drenched with the COVID sweat, so I'm okay for now.
So let's get started. I want to do a little bit of an introduction, and I have a new digital assistant, and this is Vera for you. So let's hear her talk about you.
Introducing Dr. Michael Byrne, a gastroenterology luminary and AI trailblazer. He's a clinical professor of medicine at the University of British Columbia, director of the Interventional Endoscopy Fellowship Program, and the visionary CEO of Satisfai Health, where he's leading the charge in precision endoscopy powered by artificial intelligence. Dr. Byrne boasts dual degrees from Cambridge and Liverpool universities and honed his expertise in advanced endoscopy at Duke University. His accolades include a doctorate from Cambridge University for pioneering research on Helicobacter pylori and cyclooxygenase. Widely recognized as a pioneer in AI for gastroenterology, Dr. Byrne is a sought-after speaker at international conferences, with over 150 peer-reviewed papers, 200 abstracts, and authorship of Wiley's AI in Clinical Medicine. His contributions to the field are monumental. Dr. Michael Byrne, a catalyst for innovation in gastroenterology, is reshaping the future of healthcare through AI. Stay tuned for his incredible journey on the Scope Forward show.
That's welcome, Mike. Not bad, right? So I got distracted with her hands.
I've just found my new marketing lead, so you'll have to give me details. We're looking for some additions to that part of our group, so that would be fantastic. I was going to say that she read the bio that my mother wrote, but there were many long words in that, so I think that was all your work, not mine or hers.
That's also AI in action. So AI helped with making the bio a little bit more fun and light for an AI agent to read it out. So I'm excited to talk a lot more about AI. This entire conversation is going to be, for the most part, about AI. I want to start by asking you, Mike, give us an update on Satisfai Health. Where are things with the startup and what is the latest and greatest with the company?
Well over a year ago, it's been a very busy 12, 18 months. But, I think most people in the startup world say it's always busy, and it is. And that can be good and bad. I think the majority of our busyness and mine in the last couple of years has been good. We've grown the company in size quite significantly, 25 plus people now. We have been in acquisition mode, as you may have read last year with the acquisition of Docbot. We've continued to build a suite of solutions that we aim to knit together. There's kind of a continuum of solutions in the clinical practice space. In the clinical trial space, particularly in relation to IBD, so Crohn's and colitis, we've engaged some industry in the pharmaceutical world for some projects. I can't go into too much detail there. What I can comment on is that we forged a partnership with Alimentiv, formerly Robots. It's a GI-specific IBD niche CRO based out of London, Ontario. We're delighted to work with that group. So yeah, those are some of the highlights in the last 12 months or so.
Excellent. Let me start by asking you about your acquisition of the assets of Docbot. This happened at some point last year. Now, I was familiar with Docbot as one of the early startups in AI and GI. What happened there and what is the story there?
Probably won't go into too much details. Obviously, we were in a position at the time, there was an opportunity to acquire Docbot. The physician founders there, and this is very important to me, Bill Carnes and Jason Samarasena, I've known for years, amazing founders, amazing individuals. So it had to be the right fit for them as well as for us. And get-go, I had their buy-in and their enthusiasm to remain involved and to continue the Docbot vision under Satisfai umbrella, basically. So we were happy to be in that position of taking that group on. And it was a nice addition to what we've already been building. You know, some of it was additive, some of it was complementary, but we got some excellent new talents based in Southern California, some nice new IP, bunch of patents, and two physician founders who have remained very much involved to my great delight ever since.
Congratulations. What does Satisfai Health in terms of products and solutions? What is in the portfolio right now? What do you offer to the market?
So most of our tools are still going through the regulatory approval process and or clinical trials as required at a very advanced stage in the polyp space, I guess, colon polyp detection, so CADI and colon polyp differentiation or CADX. The other quality measures during colonoscopy, bowel prep automation, recognition of landmarks like the cecum, timing of withdrawal, Crohn's and colitis. If I still say in the lower GI tract, we're doing a lot of work in automating the read of videos collected when patients are potentially going into clinical trials. So instead of having to always use a central reader, we've developed an AI tool that will either augment, abbreviate the read, potentially replace the reader in time with the right approvals. Upper GI stuff, we're doing a lot of work in the Barrett space, early cancer detection, finding dysplasia in Barrett's, trying to get away from non-targeted biopsies and actually trying to direct physicians to areas of concern. That's a very exciting space, and I think a very needy one. We recently forged a partnership with Oxford University for some Barrett's work that group have been doing, and it's now under the Satisfai umbrella as well. So we're looking forward to kind of collating all of those tools together and coming out with a very comprehensive Barrett's tool. I think maybe the last, as I think through the portfolio, we have a partnership with the International Bowel Ultrasound Group, IBUS, in relation to AI solutions for intestinal ultrasound, so handheld transabdominal point of care ultrasound for Crohn's and colitis, which is quickly growing in appetite for GI doctors globally.
You've been in the space for a while as Satisfai Health. I've seen the offerings morph over time. Now, since that point, there have been other startups that have come about and they've raised funding. They're in the polyp detection area. There are also large enterprises that have stepped in. I'm not naming them, but I think we know who they are. I'd want to know, do you compete with these offerings that are available now, or what you're doing is completely distinct?
It's definitely a competitive marketplace. I mean, I think if you take individual products that we have, of course, there are other groups, some of whom have got regulatory clearance in polyp detection, for example. I see the future needs in AI being more of a value chain offering to the physician, to the patient, to the hospital, to the HMO, to the insurers, whatever. So if you have a suite of solutions, and I won't say we're unique in that, but I think we have a very comprehensive range of, it was deliberate, I can say, to work on multiple things at once, rather than focusing just on one and getting regulatory approval. Easy if you are a large multinational technology company, but as a small startup, you have to choose your pathway. So we decided to go deep and comprehensive and then come out with a suite of solutions. So we're at that place now. Central reading tool I mentioned to you, working with Alimentive, the aim very much is to have that in clinical trials in the not too distant future.
Is the company self-funded, or have you raised money from institutional investors? So what is the funding status, whatever you're comfortable sharing?
We went through a Series A early this year, so we're good.
Okay. You've also written and come out with a new book, AI in Clinical Medicine. I'd love to know more about the book and what the book is about.
I got married 2 years ago, 18 months ago.
Congratulations.
I think, yeah, I was going to say that taking on a book on top of being a physician, although I don't work very much at the hospital these days, running a startup and being newly married and doing a book at the same time, disaster. But thankfully, it's all been fine. But joking aside, it's a huge amount of work. I was approached by Wiley maybe 3.5 years ago. These things take time to brew, right? The writing process, getting all the authors together was a gargantuan effort, but thankfully I had good support from my editorial team that I put together, and got a copy here on my shelf. Looking back, and now I see this with 140 authors, 45 or 50 chapters across a wide range of needs is great to see. it's clearly out of date already. Any textbook is out of date before it gets to press. What we hope is that it's a good foundational text for AI. What I do want to point out, if I didn't mention it, is the artwork on this book was actually done by a robotic artist. So you had your AI model read my bio at the beginning, but we got the permission of the founder of a robot called Ida Robot, the world's first robotic artist to use her art for the front cover of the book.
What are the big takeaways from the book? What were your big findings? Like, a lot of times as a writer, when you work on a book, or in this case, you edited the book, you've been the lead editor. Like, so when you put all this together, one of the biggest takeaways is your own takeaways. You end up learning a lot through the process. What were your takeaways as you worked through the book?
Like I said a few minutes ago, I think one of them might be, don't do another book, but it is a huge amount of work, even if you dedicate your entire time to it. That said, my other positive takeaways were huge network that has been developed, friends or colleagues now in the medical AI space across the globe and across the specialties. And there's lots of overlap, lots of things we can learn from people in radiology and surgery and various anatomies. The idea here is not to be a high-level AI textbook, okay? There are plenty of those out there. This was to bring the concept of AI in medicine to your day-to-day healthcare professional. So the basics of AI, the building blocks, how you put some of the algorithms together, ethics, safety, risk, those kind of things at the beginning. And then fairly comprehensive. I don't think we covered quite every field in the clinical section, but most fields in the section, body, are covered in the middle section of the book. And then we wanted to be forward-thinking towards the end, how to incorporate these technologies into real practice, how to look at reimbursement, and how to go beyond aspirational AI to, truly day-to-day AI being used in medicine. So, like I say, a key thing is I've made a significant network and I've got a bunch of friends from this book.
Congratulations on the book as well. Mike, I want to ask you to paint the present status of AI in gastroenterology. If you were to paint the landscape, what does it look like now?
So many things have moved forward very well, but you could also argue that we've been stuck a little bit. If you look at the mass adoption of AI or the availability of multiple different types of tools in GI in North America, it's pretty much limited to polyp detection rather than other technologies that are being licensed in Europe for biopsy in polyps, for quality assurance, for Barrett's esophagus, etc. So it's a little surprising to me. Had you asked me 3 years ago, would we have more than polyp detection approved and in clinical use in North America? I would say absolutely. And we're not. I do think, however, that a significant land shift is happening, hopefully, for everybody's benefit. But I think what we're also seeing, and maybe some of the barrier there, is it's great to have standalone testing and showing accuracy. And many groups, including ours, have shown that before. The AI tool on that data set does really well. And then people want to see randomized clinical trials, randomized control trials. Very important to have good RCT evidence, but that's probably not enough now to convince many people to adopt AI and to push for clinical AI. And that is the need for post-marketing or post-product placement evidence, right, of cost effectiveness and utility. So I think those studies are starting to come through. Some of my colleagues in this space, some of our competitors, are doing some great work looking at the utility of some of these tools like CADI, polyp detection, in actual day-to-day practice. And hopefully that's where the value is going to be seen, and we will get past this slight sticking point that I think we're at in terms of adoption.
What's been the biggest bottleneck for adoption? It's more than the technology.
It is. It's concerns about true efficacy, whether that's real or not. I won't quote names, but I've spoken to a number of colleagues in GI globally when I go to meetings, and some of them point blank say they don't think they need it. Sometimes internal voice is, well, if your adenoma detection rate is 80%, then probably you don't. But if it's like 35 or 40, you can always get better, and technology will help you. Some of it is just lack of education, lack of experience, lack of insight. And, that's why I took on that book, for example, just to try and disseminate that a little bit more, that message. A big one, the elephant in the room, is reimbursement, right? Who's going to pay for this? Because these things, as you know from your many conversations, these are not cheap technologies to develop, to put through trial, to put through regulatory, before you even get to, putting it out in the market and distributing. So it's not for the faint-hearted. And if people don't see a reimbursement path down the pipe, then it's also a barrier. I think those are the key ones.
So let's talk about reimbursements. And you're right, that is the elephant in the room, because one of the biggest questions about AI is actually nothing to do with AI. It goes more like, who's going to pay for it? So who's going to pay for it? What do you know about the direction of where insurance reimbursements are going? Is that the right approach? Are there alternative payment models that are emerging? You said that you were in a meeting where discussions were around reimbursements. Would love to learn more.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to address. A lot of people joke and say, oh, nobody's going to pay for it. It's just going to be an expected tool. Well, maybe if you're, a large multinational industry leader, you can do that. But in general, for the whole range of tools in GI or in medicine alone, there needs to be a commercial viability, right, for products to survive and to be useful. Who's going to pay? We are seeing some emergence of, in the US, for example, CPT codes. Okay, so there have been 2 or 3 obvious ones in the last few years: Viz AI and IDX for diabetic retinopathy. Some other examples coming through of CPT or new technology add-on payment type codes in radiology. So I think there's every reason to believe that those will come to GI. Remember, radiology started this AI journey way before we did. So, I think many people say that GI has actually taken the bull by the horns. There was something a year or 2 ago that actually I think I read on your blog, the biggest number of RCTs in AI in the medical space was actually in GI endoscopy. So I think some of those fee codes will come to GI, hopefully in the not too distant future. Or is it value-based payment? Do we need to show cost effectiveness in the market, show that you save time, you buy back physician time, you improve accuracy, you improve outcomes, and maybe part of the payment back there is from, for example, in the States, is from the HMO, the third-party insurer, depending on the situation, right? I think there are several examples of where payments can go. Having said that, you're right. I was just at a meeting in Washington, D.C. over the weekend. There was a very interesting session in the afternoon led by the faculty there on reimbursement barriers and opportunities in GI. And lots of, well, it could be this and it could be that and it could be the other. But still at the end, I think most of us left a little unsure as to how and maybe when reimbursement comes in one or many guises. I think I can confidently say that somebody somewhere will pay for this. The healthcare system in general will see the utility and the benefit of AI. We're just at the beginning of seeing the advantages. Of course, there are downsides. We can talk about that if you like, but the benefits of AI in medicine, in GI, in endoscopy are literally huge. The ability to drive towards personalized medicine, precision endoscopy, whatever you want to talk about, is very significant. And as soon as the value of that is even sniffed by the paying bodies, I think the floodgates will open. That's my fairly strong prediction. There's too many people who are staying in this space as well. And I think if it was a fad or something that, clearly is not going to be adopted by healthcare professionals, many people would, raise the white flag and move on to the next cool thing in technology. And they're not, right? Because we all see it coming.
Yeah, no, the game is just about begun. So we're seeing all these are early signals, and it's going to be fun to wait and watch how it's going to transform not just gastroenterology, but I think the entire healthcare landscape. Talking again about reimbursement, when I had interviewed for my book Scope Forward, at that time, you made a prediction. It was very interesting. So you had said that the real game will begin, or something on these lines, where you said that is when the insurance companies mandate a certain quality measure as far as, for example, ADRs are concerned. So if they say that, look, we're going to pay you this much only if you meet a certain standard as far as adenoma detection rate, then it's going to change the game. Where are we with that type of thinking? Do you think the insurance companies are as far ahead as well? So is that going to happen?
I know they're thinking about it, and maybe not in the polyp space. That behooves the societies, the AGA, the ASGE, the ACG, the Multi-Society Task Force to push for reimbursement for viability of tools that help polyp detection, for example, if they believe in it, which I know they do. Third-party payers, insurance bodies, a lot of drug coverage. And again, we're talking maybe the US market here, but a lot of these principles can apply elsewhere. They're just different in different parts of the world, right? I mean, Europe is many different healthcare systems with different payment availabilities. But the Crohn's and colitis space, for example, if you are on a particular biologic and you want to switch, it's a somewhat subjective decision right now by the physician based on how the patient is describing their symptoms, maybe based on some stool biomarkers, and quite often based on what we visualize during a colonoscopy. These things are good, but they're not great. And they certainly can't see as well as a machine can in terms of the granular level of disease activity and the objective case to case to case to case scoring. Unlike the human who fatigue, maybe there will come a time. I know I said it before and it's not there yet, but I do believe insurers are thinking about if there's a new standard by which doctors need to be held accountable in terms of accuracy of diagnosis, which involves putting somebody on an expensive drug or changing them, but they will insist on the highest standard assessment. I actually thought we might be there when it comes to things like the polyp CADX or optical biopsy, because several modeling studies suggest if you take off polyps, small polyps, after you've optically biopsied them, you can throw them in the garbage. You've done your optical biopsy, you're promoting resect and discard. That's got some resistance despite AI technologies looking very promising in that regard. And some of that is turf, some of that is taking away somebody else's business, some of that is encroaching on pathology, group practices. So these are the real factors in this space. It's not just about what is hopefully the right thing to do. It's also real world, whose space is this encroaching on? And that's just the nature of human progression, right?
I want to present, Mike, a slightly different point of view on the payment models and the reimbursements. And, you made a comment earlier saying that this technology is not cheap or it's expensive, like it takes a lot of money. Yes, it takes a lot of money to build, but AI is the epitome of exponential technologies. And if you look at how exponentials work, they get better with time, with more data, but they also get cheaper and cheaper. Like, so the cost starts reducing. It tends to follow Moore's law. Moore's law is fitting in more components into an integrated circuit, and at the same time, the chip size getting smaller, and at the same time, the cost really becoming half and half and half and half. And so it becomes really, really cheap. So when you take that analogy and apply it to AI in gastroenterology or AI even in medicine, so it's inevitable that some of the tools that we're using outside of medicine, like, so for example, that AI agent who introduced you, I'm sure it cost a ton of money to build the technology, but it didn't cost that much money to actually use it. I have a paid version, like, so I'm one of the few who likes to pay for these things and use it. But when you do that, the value is incredible. So one of the things that I'm sensing, and I want your reflection on this, and please feel free to critique or push back. One of the things that I'm sensing is that there's going to be a startup out there, maybe not in the US, maybe from a different part of the world, with fewer barriers to entry and, like, a lot more data available, and they can play with AI. If they can do this with the visual aspect, generative AI, for example, is creating visuals, images, videos, movies without human intervention. The pricing of all this is not that high. If it can do that, then how soon before it's able to do that? Something like polyp detection, because if it can make my face do things, then computer vision aspect of that technology, can't we just apply that to something that we're doing in AI and GI right now with, again, polyp detection and beyond, optical biopsy, all, the entire thing.
Yeah, I think you make some very good points. I'll try and address some as I remember them. One of your themes there is tools being very expensive to date to train to get to commercial viability. And remember, for most groups, they don't go there. Most groups train with some limited data sets and come up with a proof of concept inference model that isn't even packaged into Python or C++ or whatever, something that can be incorporated into a device or on the cloud and used, right? Let alone going through trials and regulatory, and then maintaining safety in the market. All of those things will always continue to cost, right? But your point is well made that I picked up our first video recorder, a VHS player, when I was 13 years old in Liverpool. And it was, so we're talking 1981, 1982, it was 750 UK pounds. So like, I don't know, $1,100 or something crazy, right? For a VHS recorder. If you can get them now, they're like $10, $15, right? So all technology, like that, obviously the cost can come down. The flip argument to that is just because something maybe isn't necessarily still as expensive to develop as it was before, to get to the next level, hopefully there'll be a situation where we're always trying to improve. That's what human progress is about in many ways, right? So there is no doubt in my mind that these tools will not just be assistive or help you with detection or some decision right now, today. They are predictive. And the granular insight that you can gain from some of these models as to how your patient will do in 6, 12, 18, 24 months, if you find lesion A, B, or C, or if you put them on drug X, Y, or Z, we haven't even tapped that yet. The value of that, the value of delivering true personalized medicine is huge. So there's a big gap between where we're at now, Praveen, and getting there. And I think, maybe depends what you define by precision medicine. If it means not offering the same drug to every single patient with the same disease, that's at least a choice. But truly tailored medicine is saying, of the 50 drugs available, you should be on number 14, and I should be on number 27 based on my genomic makeup and my disease state and my biopsies and whatever it may be. That's a huge gap to get to there. And that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of investment, a lot of money. And the value that kind of tool offers is huge. So it doesn't always have to be just because it costs us a fortune to make it, we're going to charge a fortune. If it offers huge value, by default, it's worth something, right?
No, absolutely. I want your thoughts on convergence. If you take the same analogy on whatever is happening with AI, exponentials, and it becoming more progressive, and at the same time the cost coming down, the same thing can be applied to the field of digital biology. And here I mean liquid biopsy, stool DNA testing, stool RNA testing, which is making great strides in gastroenterology, and not just GI. Like if you look at some of the liquid biopsy companies, they're not targeting just one cancer, in not just colon cancer, they're targeting 50 different types of cancers. So something's going to happen. It's just a matter of time when this doubling catches up. I recall reflecting on this question, with you even earlier, and I want to see, what your thoughts are now. Do you see these fields converging? So for example, do you see in the workflow of the average mainstream gastroenterologist where these fields collide? So you have liquid biopsy going on routinely, you have AI going on routinely. And if you were to visualize that kind of a future, what would that be?
I delivered grand rounds at the GIH Innovations grand rounds at Mayo Clinic in Rochester last week.
Congratulations.
I was very delighted to accept that invitation. And I was asked to speak on the practical incorporation of AI into practice and some of the futuristic thinking. And I talked a little bit about something that my advisor and my dear friend in Oxford, James East, mentions quite a bit, which is high performance screening. So using, for example, the increasingly good and more accurate and more comprehensive liquid biopsies or stool biomarker assays, AI-driven imaging, and a very dedicated and resourced screening administrative program. And those three things together can maybe drive towards, for example, a situation where you can plan for pretty much every colonoscopy to be a therapeutic one, right? I mean, for now, no technology is going to take out those polyps, with the press of a button or with pill. You're going to have to go in and physically cut them off. Again, if we're using the polyp analogy. So if your entry into the colon screening program is with a very high performing biomarker, if you can validate that signal even more with an AI assisted read. I mean, here's a problem. If you have a biomarker that says, oh, you've got a high chance of having polyps, and the endoscopist doesn't see the 2 centimeter flat polyp with a mucus cap in the right colon because they can be hard to see, then that's not great for the patient, but it also suggests that the liquid biopsy got it wrong. It didn't. The endoscopist got it wrong. So marrying the AI with the downstream imaging after your initial signal points you in that direction. I think, that's the way forward with many diseases right now. And I think it'll reduce the burden of unnecessary endoscopies. I'll be controversial, which I don't have any problem doing most of the time, and say that in general GI practice, a lot of the endoscopy that we do is actually not that necessary. Wasting that resource. We shouldn't be putting people through procedures that aren't really going to offer them any great benefit. And if we can fine tune the funnel, the sieve to get to a procedure and make it much more likely to be a therapeutic required procedure, that gets my vote every day of the week.
Awesome. And it's going to be interesting to see how that shapes up. I have a couple of other questions. So one important thing that I want to get out of the way is the regulatory landscape surrounding AI. What is the latest, and especially if you can contextualize that for gastroenterology, what's that looking like?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier in the talk here today that in the US right now, there is still in GI only one approved technology type, which is CADI or polyp detection assistance with AI. And in Europe, it's 5 or 6 things with optical biopsy, with Barrett's, with bowel prep, some other QA type measures. My impression, the FDA has appropriate barriers to entry. We all should want that. Otherwise, it's the Wild West, and we don't want chaos. We don't want unsafe tools. But there needs to be an accommodation of newer concepts, right? The idea of doing an optical biopsy a few years ago with a machine, I think, was foreign to most regulatory bodies. And as the evidence is suggesting that it can actually do it really well, then I see groups like the FDA and the CE process in Europe shifting. But, it's still important to have all the appropriate safeguards in place. I think we talked about this earlier, that in some ways we are stuck a little bit in the last 2 or 3 years in terms of the range of tools available in North America. I do think that's going to change in the next 12 months.
Now, Europe makes great strides. I've also learned that Japan makes a lot of great strides in AI and GI. What's the rest of the world doing? If I may ask, what can US learn from whatever is happening from the rest of the world as far as AI in GI is concerned?
You could argue that the process in Europe is a lower barrier to entry. I don't want to necessarily say that. There are other issues with going through the European process, having to go through, intermediary notified bodies. And that can be a bottleneck. But is it true to say that it's an easier entry into the European market? Probably. Well, evidence is out there, right? 5 or 6 different types of tool approved rather than one in North America or in the US, shall we say. In Japan, I don't know a huge amount about it. I do know that they have, governmental, national support for AI incorporation, and also governmental and national healthcare support for reimbursement of AI, right, with development of fee codes. And that's supporting the dissemination there of AI tools. So I think we can learn from them on 2 levels, which is these tools in areas of high need. Japanese endoscopy is fantastic. They drove a lot of the kind of imaging, high magnification, different types of filtered light that before we were relying on the human eye. And now the AI can see even more detail in white light than maybe, the human eye can see with some of these fancy scopes. But the Japanese led the field there in terms of much more granular insight. They've moved on a lot to AI technologies. I don't think we should be turning a blind eye and saying, well, that's not the US or that's not Europe. It's a very esteemed healthcare system that is taking the bull by the horns here and is not making it easy, but is encouraging, groups to come through different regulatory processes for different indications, and also encouraging reimbursement.
While you were saying this, I recall seeing some kind of an announcement between Satisfai Health and Asian Institute of Gastroenterology. Was there something like that, or am I dreaming it up? In India?
No, we work with that group, fantastic group. So Nagi Reddy and Rakesh Kalapala, for example, are 2 of the lead. Yeah, we've been working with them for over 2 years now. Huge hospital, 700 procedures a day or more. pretty insane volume, but also, right at the forefront, a lot of the advanced endoscopy they're doing, a lot of the endoscopic surgery, the third space stuff. So if your question is, if what's going on in India from a regulatory standpoint?
Not just regulatory, I think I'm also interested in the innovation that's happening, outside of the US that can be brought to the US.
There's a huge amount of work being done in many parts of Asia. I don't think many of us are privy to exactly what's going on in a lot of China, but I review for the journals on AI pretty much every week. In fact, I turn most of them down because I don't have the time to review them properly. But huge number of those papers submitted are from China. So there's a lot of people there doing a huge amount of often really good work in this space. And some of that's getting into the healthcare system. I don't know too much about the regulatory barriers, how easy or not they are to overcome. But yeah, look, we should be looking to other jurisdictions for sure for guidance, right? If one part of the world has got mass adoption of AI in medicine and it's found to be really good and safe and efficient and cost saving and etc., and somewhere else on the planet is not doing it at all or having a very slow adoption, one of those two has got it wrong.
And that time is going to reveal. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But Mike, with this partnership that you have with the entity in India, with the volume of procedures that they do, you said 700 a day. The benefit for Satisfai Health would be the kind of data that you're able to get, like, so to fine tune the algorithm, or what is the nature of such a partnership? Like, I think what I want to ask is, why would you be interested in the first place?
We get data from many different places in many different parts of the globe, and there's other affiliations that I can't go into right now. But there's still no replacement for volume or heterogeneity, different viewpoint. We definitely didn't want to just go and get data from, the Midwest and nothing else, right? You really need to have a global approach here. Now, that's not to say, that just reminds me about something that I heard over the weekend, that we need to have, let's go back again to polyps. Let's make it boring about polyps. A detection algorithm that applies to every single ethnicity and population and geography on the planet. It doesn't, because there may not be a one size fits all. But if there is it may well be that you need to have a particular algorithm tailored for the Indian population or in mainland China compared to what they are doing in different parts of Europe or the US. But variety of data, volume of data is, behind our rationale. And I'm sure many of the groups that I know very well out there who are collecting data from all over the place.
Mike, as we begin to wrap up our conversation here, I have two final questions. Let me start with the first one. What's your advice to private practice GI in the US, based on everything that you know and what you see happening? And if you can outline this advice for the next 3 to 5 year period, even better.
I think your question probably points to an idea that AI adoption and appetite exists mostly in academic silos for now. It's a cool tool, it's giving more insight, and that private practice might be more about quick turnover, high volume. I'm not saying low quality, I'm just saying, it's very much a business. I don't think anybody in private practice should be at all worried about AI tools diminishing their income or shifting their practice down. The true value of AI is going to be seen when we have this more comprehensive thematic melding of various tools all in one in the patient flow. So something helps you with quality assurance during the procedure, tells you that you didn't look behind that fold, finds a lesion, helps you optically biopsy what you're looking at, does your bowel prep, times your withdrawal, puts most of those metrics into a report. So when you sit down at the desk, it's pretty much written for you, just for you to edit or confirm. Sets your surveillance interval digitally, does your billing from all the things it's worked out that it's found. And, if you're lucky, makes you a cup of tea. The time saving there, most of us want to be freed from some of the administrative burden, the stuff that we don't like doing, right? A lot of the logistics of paperwork and reporting and what have you. So in private practice, will AI ultimately help that kind of setup? Absolutely, in my opinion.
Excellent. So, Mike, if you have to present the future of gastroenterology from the lens that you're seeing, our entire conversation actually has been about the future. But if you'd like to summarize and present, what does the future of gastroenterology look like?
I think it is one where, phrase I've used before, but I see as much more relevant now to this debate, is putting an expert on your shoulder. Okay, so you name a global expert in their space in medicine. endoscopic surgery for early cancers in the stomach. It takes a huge amount of training in limited number of training centers to get that expertise. And then to maintain that expertise takes a huge amount of that practice being your practice on a daily basis. That is not the case for most people. However, that's also why when we see something or don't see something there, it's a problem, because we underappreciate pathology that exists. If there's an expert on your shoulder, that global expert in the guise of an AI tool with you, why would you be threatened for that? It's physician and machine in perfect harmony. That's what I see. I mean, everybody always talks about this phrase now that they adopt for their field in medicine, that AI won't replace doctors, but doctors who use AI will replace those who won't, right? You can change that for cardiology or GI or whatever you want, or any other industry, I guess. But I agree with that. But I actually think it's hybrid intelligence. It's the physician or the healthcare worker and the machine working together. We know the outcomes are going to be better. So it's exciting. I think we're on a very transformative trajectory overall in this space. I'm definitely excited about the future. I don't think I'm going to write book number 2. I'm not that excited.
Dr. Michael Byrne, founder CEO of Satisfai Health. It's been tremendously insightful listening to you and reflecting with you throughout our conversation. Thank you for coming back on the Scope Forward show. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. I'm glad I didn't cough too much. And sorry, it's getting a little dark here in Vancouver, but great to come back.